This past Saturday, March 14th, I might have run one of my best races so far. This was at the St. Patrick's Day 5K here in Vancouver, and I don't think I've ever surprised myself like this in a race before. If you're new here, I'm Albert, and I'm a 254 marathoner that's currently training for the Copenhagen Marathon. In this video, I'll break down how my recent 5K went, and also what that result means for my goal in Copenhagen. Let's get into it. So to start off, I'll give you a quick rundown of my race morning and what I did to get ready for the race.
It's race morning.
The race started at 9:30 a.m., which let me get up at 6 in the morning, which for me, honestly, isn't that early as far as race mornings go. I like to get to a race and start my warm-up about an hour before the gun goes off, and I also like to have about 2 hours at home to get ready and eat breakfast, and this way I'm not rushed at all, which I find is nice. And speaking of breakfast, my pre-race meal was just a simple half a bagel with jam. I found in the past that I really can't have too heavy of a meal before a workout or a race because my stomach just is a bit sensitive, but I found that the half a bagel and jam is pretty dense on carbs and is a good fuel source before a race without being kind of too heavy and sitting really heavy in my stomach. Normally at home for coffee, I'll drink a pour over, but before a race or workout, I'll always do a double shot of espresso because it's got a similar amount of caffeine, but the amount of liquid is a lot lower. So again, it'll just sit better in my stomach is what I found. Then once I got my bib on and packed my bag, it was time to head over to the race. My girlfriend came with me as well to watch the race and film, which was amazing. And it was a pretty quick 15-minute drive to get there. So we got there right on time pretty much, which was great. One principle of running that I've learned over the years is that the shorter your race is, the longer you want your warm-up to be. And this is mainly because with a shorter race, you just don't have time to warm up in the race itself, and you're pretty much just going at a high intensity right from the get-go. So I started my warm-up with just some light dynamic stretching to get the body slowly warmed up. And then I went into about a 3K, very light jog, again, just gradually warming up the body. And after that 3K, I put my race shoes on, which were the Puma Fast R3s. And with those shoes on, I did another 400 or 500 meters at around my goal 5K pace. And I finished off with just a couple sets of strides. I got into the start corral with about 5 minutes to go till the race started, which was a bit tight for sure, but it was a pretty small race, so honestly it was pretty easy to just get into the corral pretty last minute. And honestly, if I had the opportunity, I like to get into the corral almost as late as possible, which I know isn't for everybody, but I just like getting warm and then not really have to worry about getting cold in the corral potentially. I got into the start corral with about 5 minutes left to go until the race started, and then 5 minutes later, we were off. Now, leading into this 5K, I've had this feeling that my last few races have all just been a bit too conservative and pretty much I was just playing them too safe. I felt this way about CIM, which was my last marathon, and also about the first half, which was the first race I did earlier this year, and I kind of just walked away from that race, probably feeling a bit too fresh. All that's to say, my goal for this 5K was to just go for it. Rip the Band-Aid off, send it, go for broke, pedal to the metal, PR or ER. If anything, I'd be happier blowing up in this race than I would be by playing it safe. At least if I blew up, I'd know where my limits are. So going for it was the plan. I should note that this race definitely has a bit of a challenging course. It's a road 5K with about 43 meters of elevation gain in total, which is pretty substantial for a 5K. It's also a bit of a tricky race to pace because you get a huge downhill in the first kilometer and there's a massive uphill in the final kilometer. And in the middle of the race, you've got a bunch of rolling hills. If you start out the race too hot, that final hill is gonna be brutal. Going into this race, I felt like running a 17:37 was kind of my ambitious goal because that was exactly 1 minute faster than the time I ran at the same race last year. More conservatively though, going under 18 minutes felt pretty realistic, and that would still beat my PB of 18 minutes and 13 seconds. To start out, I clocked a 3:20 first kilometer, which is definitely fast, but even if you pace the race correctly, the first kilometer should be your fastest because of that big downhill. I felt like I paced that first kilometer pretty perfectly actually, and really didn't start out too recklessly, which was good. After that first kilometer though, I kind of found myself in a surprising situation where I ran back-to-back 325 kilometers in the second and third K, And at the 3K mark, I was sitting at right around 17 flat 5K pace. Now, I knew that I wouldn't be able to hold this pace throughout the rest of the race, mainly because of that big uphill in the last kilometer, but I did some math and realized that I could lose up to 30 seconds in the last 2K and still go under 17:30 in this 5K. And I wasn't feeling that bad at the 3K mark, so I was pretty confident I wouldn't lose 30 seconds in just 2 kilometers. So in the middle of the race, pretty much, I changed my goal on the fly to now try and finish under 17 minutes and 30 seconds. I listened to a podcast episode recently with Rory Linkletter where he talked about running the Houston Half Marathon and going for the Canadian Half Marathon record. And he essentially found himself in a very similar situation where he was well ahead of Canadian half marathon record pace with not that much left to go. So if he just didn't blow up, he was going to be the one to set the new record. He called this scenario playing with house money. And to me, that feels like a very bang on description.
Those are the best days is when you kind of feel like you've got house money. And Houston was like that. I knew I was going to break 60. I was like, I'm going to break 60. I know I'm not going to die. We were on like 59:30 pace at 15K. And I was like, I'm not going to lose 30 seconds in the last 5K. There's no way. I'm not dead yet. So now we're playing with house money. And it's just, I can kind of like throw caution to the wind and just go.
It felt like I sort of had nothing to lose at this point, where even if I blew up completely, I'd probably still hit my A goal or at least go under 18. But if I sent it and just went for it, I might run really a pretty crazy time. So it felt like a risk that was worth taking. It's one thing to realize you're playing with house money in a race, but it's another to actually still execute it and pull it off. And with 2K left to go, I had the hardest part of the race still ahead of me, but I was determined to just push as hard as I could to the finish. I did lose some gas in the final 2K, which is kind of to be expected on this course, to be honest, but I managed to split 3:31 and 3:36 in the final 2K, and I still felt like I finished relatively strong. When I crossed the finish line, I thought I was gonna throw up for a second, but thankfully I managed to, hold it together. And yeah, maybe that's just what an all-out 5K is supposed to feel like, I guess. My official time was 17:27, and yeah, wow. Going into the race, I did not think that I had that time in me, and to be able to pull that off was just a huge surprise. I would have considered 17:37 to be really an A result, and 17:27 is just an absolute A plus, I think. So I really couldn't have been happier with how the race went. I've got to give credit to my run club teammate Adam, though, who had a similar mentality to me going into this race. He wanted to run it the Japanese way, basically where you just start out super hot and then try and hold on for as long as you can. And we ran together for the first 3K before he dropped me and pretty much just never slowed down on his way to the finish. And he finished in exactly 17 minutes. Yeah, it was an absolutely monster run from him. And without having him to pull me through that first 3K, I don't think I would have run quite as fast as I did. So that made a huge difference. And after the race, I met with my coach to break down the 5K and also talk about what that result meant for the rest of my build towards the Copenhagen Marathon. Yeah, first time in a while I ran a race where I was actually surprised myself.
Right. Well, it's certainly a good time to do it.
I mean, yeah, definitely the confidence now is higher.
Yeah. The other thing I would say about it as well is that if you look at the course, you ran 17:27. So I think that's a 17:10 on a flat course.
Yeah.
And then you're looking very close to under 17.
I mean,
Decaf Cortado.
I remember feeling at 3K, like if the course had just stayed flat for the rest of the race, I think I could have held like 3:25 per K.
Yeah.
Probably, which is pretty close. That's probably like a 17:10 or so.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a fair reflection on the course.
Yeah.
What we don't want to do is set ourselves up for disappointment.
No, I think to be honest, like when you look at these, I think it's always like the marathon might be the hardest equivalent time to actually hit.
Yeah.
Because it just, you need to execute so perfectly.
Yeah.
So maybe if you add like even a minute or two to that.
But I think with CIM though, you had a lot more in the tank.
100%. But I think even if I was more aggressive, it's maybe like a 2:52. I don't think it could have been that much faster.
Yeah.
Because it was 2:54 mid.
Yeah.
And I think now we've definitely been hammering the workouts harder.
Yeah, and
than
that's
last
what we
year.
should be doing.
Yeah, I think it's made a difference for
Yeah,
sure.
because that breeds confidence. You get quicker, you get stronger, and you're like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
There'll be times where you probably feel a little bit more tired. Because,
yeah, for sure.
Because you're doing it, but that's the nature of the game. I think 2:45 is realistic, but everything has to go well.
Yeah.
From preparation, nutrition, and
training.
Pacing, yeah. And I think now we start looking at training with nutrition making sure we fuel for the longer runs and the hard, heavy workouts that are going to come up.
An interesting tool that I made use of after the race, which you might not know about, is the grade adjusted pace calculator. And pretty much what it is you put in your distance and your time from your race, but also the total elevation gain that you had from it. And it'll calculate the equivalent time that you theoretically would have run on a perfectly flat course. For my 5K, the flat equivalent was a 17:05, but my coach thinks the race I ran was probably closer to a 17:10 equivalent. I'd be inclined to agree with him, if nothing else, because that prediction is a little bit more conservative. You do have to be a bit careful with these theoretical times though, because you ran the time you ran and not the theoretical time, but it can give you a sense of how hard the course you ran was. Another tool that I use a lot is v.o2.com. And this is a tool where you can put in your recent race result and it'll give you your predicted times for all the other distances as well. Based on my actual time of 17:27, I'm in 2:47 marathon shape according to v.o2. But if you look at the 17:10 theoretical equivalent, I'm actually in sub 2:45 shape already. Now, the 5K probably is the worst predictor for marathon performance compared to running a 10K or a half marathon, but I have a decent amount of experience running marathons at this point, and even though I might not be able to run a sub 2:45 right now, I think with another 4 to 5 weeks of hard training and high mileage, I think that time is definitely in the ballpark. So yeah, sub 2:45 is the new goal for the Copenhagen Marathon for me. That's a pretty big difference compared to the start of the year when I first started training for this marathon, when I was looking to go under 250. But I think given the way my training's been going, reaching for sub 2:45 actually isn't that far-fetched, and my coach is on the same page, which is a nice reality check. Now that I'm in the final stretch of training for the Copenhagen Marathon, it's time to get marathon specific and really nail some high quality weeks of training. One thing I'm adding in now is heat training, which has, I think, made a big difference to my fitness in the past, although somewhat accidentally, and that's something I'm going to talk about in the next episode. Stay tuned to hear more about that and how you can apply heat training to your own running, and stay tuned to see how the rest of the build goes as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.